Not your homework.
Good morning. Welcome into Boston has entered the chat. It's Tuesday, July 1st, live inside the Salem 5 Studios. Timeout, drop my marker. You guys will understand why. George Balekshi, Casey Hudson. I'm going to do the rest of this standing up. Forget it. Why not? Have my chair in the back. I feel like getting the energy in on this morning. Feels better to stand up. We got a packed show for you guys. We got the whiteboards out. That's why I needed the marker. We're going to be talking plenty around the NHL and free agency as well. Going a little GM mode here. Who are the top guys we want to see the Bees sign? Who are some value picks they can make? Doing that and more, and then we'll get into plenty more ahead of the show. Hey, make sure if you want to leave a voicemail, 617-790-0928. Tweet at us using the hashtag NESSONChat and email us, thechat@NESSON.com. All right, Case, so we know the big signing, the reported signing, because nothing's official yet. Right. Free agency starts today at noon in the NHL. Morgan Geekie, 6 years, $33 million, big payday for him. Ayo. Line made for David Pastrnak, but the Bruins certainly, with cap space, have to go out and get more. Yeah. So let's start with who's the big name you want to see them sign and bring in free agency?
Okie dokie.
So this one I got.
I'm going to piss off Bruins fans bright and early.
All right, we'll see what that is. Wonder what sweater he used to wear this past season. One, right, two, three. Yep. Besser, I'm going Ehlers. So we're both going wingers here.
Right. So we're still on the same theme.
Outside scoring.
Oh, sorry. Let me make sure that you guys can see like almost the why here. It's moolah, baby. We got to be smart about the money. I know some people think that Besser's going to come in at this like outrageous price. I think he can be talked down just a smidge. There was so much conversation around the culture of the locker room for Vancouver. If he feels like he's going to get a fresh start, he's also going to join a bunch of Minnesota boys. I mean, I know Minnesota and Massachusetts, when it comes to the hockey life, it's a battle, but there's so many Minnesota guys on this roster, and prospect pool wise, I just feel like there's ties there, there's connection, there's relationship, and anyone who's looking for a fresh start to make an impact, that price can be right. It can come down a little bit more than the biggest name circulating and get a couple more years out of him.
Look, I like the Besser play. Outside scoring, which they need very badly, can be a depth piece too. If he doesn't slot in on the first line, can drop to the second. I look at Nikolai Ehlers, and this is a guy that has been a top free agent, left shot right wing, so can slot into that second line just below David Pastrnak perfectly, which they've needed. Going back to last season, if they bought in at the deadline, this was a guy they should have traded for and swung on as well, would have added depth behind a Pastrnak and David Marchand, so on and so forth. But he's been durable, not as of late, but still you see 69 or more games played, 6 of his last 10 seasons. And then also 21 or more goals every year from his second year on, outside of the COVID season. And he's a big addition on the power play. 6 goals, 16 assists last season, just 29 years old. So you're giving somebody that provides outside scoring, which they need, slots in perfectly as a left shot where they need, helps in the special teams, and is young and in his prime, adding depth. I'm all in on Nikolai Ehlers.
I'll say that some of the versatile centers can do center as well as left wing. So that's also why I was kind of pivoting around with the idea of left wing versus right wing. But where I would add a little bit of sell to the Besser conversation is also the fact of him being a guy who can eat up some opportunity in the slot. We saw so many great slot passes. I mean, Pastrnak is one of the best slot passers in the NHL. Somebody has to be able to polish that off, especially if we need to see some scoring distribution and maybe a little breakup for benefit between him and Morgan Geekie. So we'll see who that ends up being.
Look, if they get a wing, that's what's needed. Yeah. And you mentioned on David Pastrnak. We understand what the line can be of a Morgan Geekie, a Pavel Zacha, and David Pastrnak. Geekie playing off of Pasta, getting 33 goals. And it was a 1 year they played together. That's what got him his contract. That's what gave the Bruins promise that they believe in him at this point. So if you have your first line solidified, and the NHL now, it's all about top nines, right? At least you got to get your next 3 skaters. You have to have your top 6 solidified in some fashion. A Besser and Ehlers can help do that. So now let's go a little bit of like the value signing. And maybe that could be someone that's a third line wing. You can shock me and go with the blue line on this one.
We need a right-handed, right shot defenseman for crying out loud. But
who would you go with for a value signing? Oh my handwriting.
I will say, guys, I had a weird premonition that Nick Perbix ends up in a Bruins sweater. Don't hate me for that. It was just like a
dream.
No, it's not a dream.
Epiphany.
It's just like
palm reading.
It's just like his name started really picking up on Twitter, and I'm like, dang, you're talking about a RHD, right?
Shot. defenseman.
Young. All right, where'd you go?
Mangiapane. With the Caps, little Manja.
I'm going to say that correctly.
He'd fit in perfect with the North End, get plenty of good food there.
Oh, yeah.
Who'd you go with?
Jonathan Drouin, baby.
Jonathan Drouin.
Bring him to Boston ASAP, please.
Why singing for Drouin to get to
Why
Boston?
am I going back to my high school cheerleading days? I was that girl, 30 years old, 6 foot, 203 pounds, sitting around $2.5 million. Oh, a power play guy, by the way. Oh, 37 points through 43 games. Oh, somebody who has speed that he can bring to the lineup. I just think that he could be a breath of fresh air, and you can kind of plug and play him anywhere in a number of ways. But you're adding to the left wing side of things, and something else, and I'm sure considering that we talked about getting more pucks on net for this team, he's not a high shot volume guy, but the accuracy is there. So he makes every shot matter, and I love the idea of that because you can plug him in and he can elevate wherever you need him to be. Throw him on the third line, for crying out loud. He can be a driver. He's going to get in the zone. He's going to start opening things up. And you can just see the way that Avs fans rallied behind him. When they found out that he was going to be healthy again to play, they were losing their minds because they knew what Drouin could bring to the ice each and every time. I think for $2.5 million, you're looking at age, you're looking at value, you're looking at skill that can slot right in for the Bees.
I agree with the value on that one. I think it brings more value than a guy like Mangiapane, who's coming off a great season, but that's also ballooned by his numbers on being on the Capitals, who are the best regular season team in the NHL. That alone is going to get him paid. But he's about to be 29, and he can play on the third line, which is perfect for this Bruins team, and be a 30, 40-point guy per year. It's a 14% shooting percentage. Again, he had that with the Caps, so that's going to give him a lot more opportunities and a lot more advantage. But that type of efficiency for a third-line winger, I would take 10 times out of 10.
Sure.
It has to come at the right spot, and the right price at that too. So here's the one where I'm going to cheat a little bit. I know the camera's on me. I'm also going to go with Michael Granlund. And this is a guy, now he's 33 years old. So the first two that I pitched were under 30. And Granlund's certainly a vet. This would be his fifth team since 2022.
Right.
But coming off a 22 goal, 44 assist season, a guy that has been around the block but has that scoring efficiency and explosion, can play wing or center. When this is a roster where does Elias Lindholm slot in? Pavel Zacha, Casey Middlestat. Are they down the middle? Are they on the outside? What does Marco Sturm picture for them? Well, Michael Granlund, with his game end-to-end, is a dirty goal scorer too, can play in the slot, can play right around the crease as well to score goals, and can be that vet leader. I really like Granlund as a fit for the Bruins.
I love him. I was so excited when he went to Dallas. I wish that he could find more of a long-term home. Can't disagree with anything you said there. For me, it's like pick up a center. You drafted 105 centers. We've got so much going on with the centers. What do we want from centers?
Could play wing too.
I don't know. There's just so much center. That's true. It was part of your pitch. I'm going to go a little off the beaten path here. Jack Roslovic is someone that I'm going to look at. You mentioned 22 goals. This is somebody with 22 goals with the Carolina Hurricanes. Some parts of his statistics not flattering, but we have basically heard a theme from players around the league where the Carolina Hurricanes offense is not an easy offense to slot in at. And when you started to see him kind of being healthy scratch from the lineup, I just felt like clearly not much of a fit there. But I look back to what he did with the New York Rangers, a team that's been trying to kind of re-identify themselves for the past 2-3 years. And the most attractive thing about his game is just the quick touch on the puck. You're talking about somebody that really surprised a number of goalies. The minute the pass comes to him, he's not thinking, he's not hesitating. He is making sure that puck is being sent to the net and the angles in which he's scoring on. So you want a little bit of creativity. You want somebody who's going to be unpredictable, that has that touch on the puck. And again, value going to come in hot for a guy like this. And I'd have a chip on my shoulder coming from Carolina where I was kind of underestimated, where my numbers kind of got less sexy, but I know I have so much potential and upside. The Bruins can be a refresh start for Roslovic.
Hey, it's a big spot because this is a team where we know who the vets are. We know the guys on the long-term extensions. But beyond that, the entire lineup is all up for contention, every single spot. You have your Pasternaks, your Zachas, your Lindholms when you're thinking about your forwards. Obviously, you have Zadorov, McAvoy, now Loride, and the Hampus Lindholm as well. But everything's up for grabs, and you certainly can get a lot of ice time, a lot of playing time. Morgan Geekie in that conversation too. But a lot of goals scored, a lot of opportunities. And that's what Boston has. Again, in a reset year where they got younger, they want to get back to contention. They have to go after a Besser and Ehlers. If they're serious about all the talk is, we're not waiting, we're getting right back to the playoffs, you have to go out and get that big money free agent. We'll see when everything starts at noon, because NHL free agency does not start till noon. We've heard the trickle out of the contracts, like a Brad Marchand signing long-term with the Panthers. We talk about that later on in the show. But it also is, we haven't heard too much noise made around the league as well. This is a team, nonetheless, that has to go all in. Yep. Because if they want to match what they're saying, they have to go out and get that big money free agent. And free agency starting at noon. You guys can leave us a voicemail, 617-790-0928. Let us know, who do you want them to sign when they make signings? Who do you like that they signed? What do you want them to add as well? Because this is a team, you keep bringing up the right shot defenseman too, because they do have to get better on the blue line. They have the names, right?
Yeah.
Lorai, Zadorov, Lindholm, McAvoy. But they need to show they can play together, and that's what's big for a team that also lost to Brandon Carlo at the deadline this past year.
And the depth. You know, we saw depth be tested a number of times throughout the season for a number of great teams that had so much to offer, but God forbid one of these players needs to go down for a stretch or can't be in the lineup. You've got to be able to rely on someone that can shut down in your D zone or contribute to the scoreboard. So I think that there's pretty decent options, because at the end of the day, you got a new head coach and he's really good at spotting potential. We went into depth with that with Nate Thompson on the Hockey Hub previously. So for somebody who can bring the best out of players, it doesn't always have to be the biggest name in the mix. And he can probably find guys that can slot into this. It's the buy-in, it's the identity, and it's what this locker room feels like and molds into that'll kind of show us what kind of success this team can have. A surprise name that I'll throw into the mix. It's not a surprise. I've seen fans tweet about it, but Will Cooley, if there's a chance to grab him, I'm hearing that there's like some offer sheet potential battles and showdowns going into the mix, and maybe that's an approach that the Bees can get. It's going to be slightly costly, but not as much as an Ehlers or a Besser, but then you're still looking at somebody who's 23 years old, can be the driver anywhere that you put him. I mean, I'd like to say that he brought the kid line back to life in New York before they dismembered those guys, but still, you saw him on the first line, second line, third line, fourth line, you saw him all over the place, and he's somebody who you would want to invest in. 23 years old, playmaker, brings so much to the ice, so if they were to go in a different direction, that's somebody who make the offer sheet work.
Another guy I can see a sneaky name out there, Dmitry Orlov. Was with the team for a quick stint. They acquired him at the trade deadline when they had the record-setting year. Is a tough player, plays end-to-end really fast, has a sick shot too. That could be another depth piece that adds to what the team we saw lacking last season. They need to get better in the power play. They need to get better down the middle. They need to have depth scoring, and they need to get deeper on the blue line. It's a lot of places for them to need to get better, but they have the cap space, and they also, the guys that they acquired at the deadline. Maybe see a Max Wanner take a big step forward. He's heralded by a lot. That's an NHL defenseman. Physically, he's ready. He'll get to that point. He's not yet 22 years old, but if that's someone that is starting to make that leap, that could be the depth piece on the blue line, and maybe they use the money elsewhere. Where they do the spending in free agency says a lot of what they see with the Providence Bees, what they see with their development system, but also what they see of guys that could be fully healthy, like an Elias Lindholm, who's battling a back injury all of this past season.
Yeah. Now we're looking for like a little bit of drama, and I go into like delusional world, something that would be a really fun conversation. This is all hypothetical. Going for an Alex Lafreniere from the LA Kings, bringing him back. He played for Harvard, bring him back to Boston, spend the money on him. He's a restricted free agent, so you'd have to do a little bit more Olympics there to make that make sense, but he's not that expensive yet. And I feel like just to see his growth of game with the LA Kings, the clutch moments that he had with the Kings this past season, I'm like, again, if you're getting younger, you want to get young, you want to have accountable skills, but you want to be able to see a big picture and bright future with anyone that you bring into the mix.
That would be a good ad in a way of having him return to Boston. And that's someone that's been a contributor since he got called up and was playing significant time with the Kings as well.
And Kings system, you're talking about Marco Sturm.
There you go.
Connecting the dots again in one way or another. I don't know.
That's a good call, because that's also something if you want to teach your system. And Marco Sturm is introducing a new system. He talks about playing with speed and freely and end-to-end on the ice. You need players that are familiar with that, because we'll see what he does defensively, what he does with his offense. And same thing, too. This guy is very successful with his power play. He's brought in the assistant coaches that have had good power plays as well, like with the Dallas Stars. Okay, so how do you bring that in? You have to bring the players that can contribute in that spot. They need a quarterback on the power play. They need to get better all over. This is where the free agency will get fun for the Bruins. They have cap space, and when it hits at noon, we'll see who could be the big signing that they bring in.
Yeah, if I'm wearing the GM hat, I'm connecting the dots as best as possible. I'm making a sweet deal for Alex from the Kings and anybody else. I think the system changes. We've talked a bunch between us and a few other guys about the hybrid potential moving forward, but it's frenzy day. It's a holiday, as I mentioned, and regardless of what goes down, I'm excited for what the future holds.
There's Christmas, there's a birthday, there's free agency. We're hopefully seeing plenty of this. Spending the money. That's what Bruins fans want to see. We'll take a quick break here on Boston Has Entered the Chat. When we're back, we'll get into what the Celtics are doing. Doesn't sound like they'll be spending any at all. We'll take a quick break on Boston Has Entered the Chat. We'll be right back after this. But make sure, as always, to get the latest up-to-date live Boston sports headlines, tune into the chat every day, 8 to 9 a.m. on NESN, 9 to 10 a.m. on NESN Nation. That's Boston Has Entered the Chat every weekday right here on NESN and wherever you get your podcasts as well. Welcome back to Boston Has Entered the Chat. Got my chair back. We're settled in. We're good. George Bilecki, Casey Hudson. We'll now get into a little bit NBA free agency and Celtics free agency. First off, so we've seen the Celtics shed $250 million in salaries and tax penalties. We've seen Jrue Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis on the out. We now see Luke Kornet signing with the Spurs. Guys they brought in, Anthony Simons, George Niang, Luka Garza. Yeah, the Celtics got Luka. A different Luka than fans would like to see.
Not the Luka.
Not the Luka. A Luka, exactly. But we also see the frustration coming from Celtics fans all across Twitter as they see the ramifications of being a second apron team. This one is from BGB. Celtics fans expecting something big in free agency to save us. Nothing is going to save us, guys. We don't have money. We don't have assets. This is why most smart fans are saying move Jaylen Brown. Do y'all understand the predicament now? We have 2 max contracts. They have assets, but yes, they don't have the money. From Celtics lead, this is going to be a rough offseason, huh? Rough for sure. I agree with that one. All right, so we're keeping the whiteboards, Case. I want to share, what are the emotions we're going to see from Celtics fans? What do you think you're feeling if you're a Celtics fan?
I went wordy. I made it so obvious I was an emo gal.
I'm going angry face. What is your stop the bleeding?
Stop the bleeding or spend what we don't have.
Yes, and that is the predicament that they're in.
Yeah.
When people talk about predicament.
I love your emoji skills, though.
Thank you. This took us about 7 hours to put together. A lot of art lessons I got from my 7-year-old niece helping me out to put that. This is a team that is dealing with the reality of going all in for a championship, but it was also the timing. If they did what they did.
That's how I feel.
They asleep?
They're just like, meh.
Okay. And see, I'm more of the angry. You are the one that's like,
meh.
Just at that point of, just toned out, like they are just like so displaced by the frustrations.
Yeah.
They went all in where they had to give out 2 supermaxes. The second Jaylen Brown got that All-NBA, he was getting supermax. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Mm-hmm. But then trading for Jrue Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis, extending a Jrue Holiday, the money he was getting, if they did everything they did and the timeline matched up with the maturity of their players, let's go 3 years ago, they would have gotten multiple rings. But they did it right before this new CBA came into the fold. And that's what it is. But they went all in, and at least they won the damn thing. Because you could either be the Celtics right now, or you could be the Phoenix Suns. And you'd much rather be the Boston Celtics that have a ring to show for it, unlike Phoenix, who came up short in the finals by all means, but a team that now is dealing with ramifications of floating too close to the sun, paying way too much, having bad assets like being stuck with the Bradley Beal.
Yeah.
Might have to give Devin Booker upwards of $70+ million a year. Where the Celtics fans stand, you may be frustrated, you may be upset, you may be bored because they're not signing anybody. They signed for a 2-year, $5.5 million contract, but at least you have a ring, a celebration, a parade, a championship run to look back on.
Yeah, it's like this fine line between appreciation and acceptance. Like, at least you're not far removed from winning a championship, but you've got to ask yourself the big question as a Celtics fan right now. If you make too much splash, if you try to kind of bankrupt yourself to make something make sense for the upcoming season, you're kind of pushing away the hope of the Jason Tatum. You still have a Jason Tatum and a Jaylen Brown on your roster.
Yeah.
We're just potentially pushing success another 2 years down the stretch here. So some of this plug and play movement, some of this stuff that's coming in at very low value, it could be packaged down the line. This is an opportunity for players to come in, not fill the void, but make a case for themselves, up the ante on their value so that they can become more valuable for the Celtics to move on from in February or next year or the year after. Then you get a healthy Jason Tatum. Then you have Jaylen Brown. We see more leadership out of him this upcoming season. And then you see what pieces you actually need to make the return to a championship, because the roster's not far off. Is it daunting? Yes, but it's not far off. So you don't want to do all of this crippling financial gymnastics for something where you still have so much talent on your roster. It's just not available to you at this moment.
When Jason Tatum's back 100% from the torn Achilles, and you have Jaylen Brown in your lineup as well, that is 2 top 20 players, 2 elite wings that can shoot, ball handle, and defend end to end. Every GM in the NBA wants one of them. and they have both. So that's what you build around. Then you have a Derek White, who's a top 30, top 40 player in the league, and is a point guard that affects every facet of the game. Off and on ball defense, ball handling, shooting, playmaking as well. Payne Pritchard, still under contract for a few years. Sam Hauser, still under contract for a few years. You see if he sticks. Like, there are the building blocks there. And then on top of that, the deals they've made of bringing in a George Niang or an Anthony Simons, there's no 100% they're making the Celtics roster come opening night in the NBA or being past the trade deadline. The goal for them is to get below the second apron and stay below it at the end of the upcoming season. So they have up until mid-February to level this all out, but they have the building blocks, and then they could go out and add. So a Luke Cornett goes to the Spurs, which is hard for a lot of Celtics fans to be at peace with, but that's a guy, 4 years, $41 million, played his way out of staying with the Celtics a year after he took a hometown discount to hopefully win another ring. And that's a guy that worked his way from a G League player to a contributor on a championship team to a legend and beloved by all Celtics fans in Boston to getting $10+ million a year. Yeah. He never in a million years should have gotten that type of payday. And he put himself in another championship situation being a backup center to Victor Wembanyama. Like, credit to Luke Cornett and everything he did to get to that point. We hear the whispers of Al Horford being favored to land with the Golden State Warriors, where he fits that system, a shooting big that can screen really well. This is now the reset mode. What I love about the Celtics is they're doing it now. They could have lingered. They could have kept going, let's go all in and be a contender. But they picked the reset now and the rebuild now instead of 2-3 years from now, where all the penalties are much worse. Like, I don't need to get into detail, but the longer you stay in that repeater tax, it's not just the more money you're spending, the more it affects your first-round picks, your assets, your draft picks, all your development pieces as well. The Celtics picked a path. What I hate about the NBA in this now, free agency goes from fans being just fans waiting for the big signings. We all have to become lawyers and accountants and litigators, figuring out the new CBA, what the penalties are, what happens with the second apron. We have to become mathematicians from MIT, figuring out the tax penalties. And it also took a lot of air out of free agency. The biggest signing is a Jaren Jackson Jr. extension to stay with Memphis. But once the dust settles, and it'll take a couple seasons for the Celtics, they will be back to contending. It's just Brad Stevens is hitting reset now and figuring it out now instead of a couple years from now.
Yeah, I feel like I have to take my prep notes to MIT and get them to like approve and confirm everything and every thought process that's taking place to make this make sense. But I think you kind of say something that's most important here, choosing to do the reset now. Doesn't that kind of speak volumes to the support and, let's just say, I don't know, the support and the hope and like the return of Jason Tatum? Like, you hit reset now knowing that your key player is out of the lineup versus trying to do a reset down the stretch, knowing what he brings to the table, knowing what you believe in this roster so far. Like, does that make sense? Am I making sense of that?
Yeah. Okay. It's with a Jason Tatum, it's that you just go all in of like, you know where he'll return to be, and especially keep the key pieces. Right. It's being that patient waiting for him to get back, you know?
Yeah.
And it's also being patient with the Joe Mazzulla to teach these guys his system. It's being patient again. Is a Jordan Walsh close to contributing? Eventually he has to become an NBA player. He's a first-round pick, freak athlete, been learning the system in Maine, and has been on the Celtics bench in the playoff runs. He eventually has to play NBA minutes. It's with the pieces they already have, the pieces coming up. And again, with this roster, it's also the support of the front office that, yes, they're not doing much now, but neither have we seen the Golden State Warriors. For the New York Knicks, outside of Jordan Clarkson signing, which is a big add, another scorer, that piece for them, they haven't done much either. The teams that are contenders, there's some big trades. We see who Cleveland's acquired. We've seen who the Hawks have acquired too. They're going acquisition after acquisition after acquisition to rebuild around Trae Young, but still with it all, this is a team that is sitting, and I think there'll be a move to a move. And Anthony Simons, that's an easy contract to move. Drew Holiday's was difficult, but they found a team dumb enough in the Trail Blazers to take on that deal. Sure, it's for long-term plan and development. We'll see, but that's a lot of money. Simons at 26 years old, $26 million, expiring deal. There's a team out there with a really skilled scorer that wants him. That will be a contract. Instead of getting under by $5 million, you could go from 26 to maybe 15 or 10 million. And then it gets you under even more. Right. By signing Luka Garza, 2 years, $5.5 million, they're just $2 million under the second apron. There's so many moving parts. Yeah, it's move before the move to set up a move 10 spots down. And this is the first
roster we're looking at where Joe Mazzulla is going to be dictating something as fresh of a start for the Celtics. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, when he came in, his first year, it was before they got the Drew Holidays and the Kristaps Porzingis. Like, that's Malcolm Brogdon's first and only season with the Celtics, and it's him getting thrusted into that spot right before the season begins. Second year, they go and win the ring, but that's also Marcus Smart, Malcolm Brogdon becoming Drew Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis. Now this year, this is when it becomes real. And for him as a head coach, this is when he has to rebuild himself in a way. Can't go out and just chuck up threes and be one of the highest volume shooting teams. Threes are worth more than two, sure. You have your analytics and what you want to play. But this is where you have to be serious about rebuilding and making it count as well. So this is a massive season for Joe Mazzulla. Because he has to develop, he has to teach his system, and he has to keep everything on track for when Jason Tatum eventually returns.
Yeah, and I asked that for a reason, because maybe that changes the approach of what this team is looking for and how they're looking to revamp everything. Because when it's the coach's first time having full dictation over what this roster is going to look like moving forward, we don't know what speaks to him per se. You mentioned the threes and the high volume, and yes, that is part of the identity we have seen so consistently, but we've seen some things that have to change. We saw things that were tested in the postseason, so it's going to be interesting to see how they move. I said stop the bleeding, but there are guys that could potentially fit the bill. It's going to cost money that we have to figure out how the Celtics can attain to even bring in any other pieces. But who's a name that you would throw on the board to bring in?
Bring the whiteboard back out.
Yeah, bringing the whiteboard back. I thought that we were going to fix the center situation, so this is also where I've got question marks.
I'm going to go quick right here. Mo Wagner. That's an N and an E and an R at the end, and it just looks like Mo Wagner.
I can bring clarity to that.
Center, Mo Wagner.
My spelling was there.
There you go, a little better on that end. But that's someone that is coming off a torn ACL, so maybe could get cheap. Right. Would have to use a mid-level exception on him or a trade exception. Again, he costs too much. But if you offload an Anthony Simons, then you bring in a Mo Wagner, and again, would be a patient play. Can trade for him, extend him, could be on the cheap because he's coming off an injury he suffered last December. And when Jason Tatum's back, that's a good center to add. Well, Luka Garza brings, he's a screener, can shoot the three, but I think he's just a G League player at most. You have Nemish Queta. It also could be a guy like, there's DeAndre Ayton out there. I'd rather develop than have a DeAndre Ayton. He'd be a stopgap. Okay. There also is Precious Achiuwa, but again, stopgap center, not a long-term solution at the center spot. So they have all these options, but it also has to make a lot of sense with how much they can afford. Like a Miles Turner, as a fit, before second apron,
that's what I was writing down.
Would make so much sense.
For Miles Turner?
That's $30 million a year. He's going to get paid. Celtics cannot afford him. Unless there was a move of a Jaylen Brown, Derek White no longer being with the team, then sure, you can afford a Miles Turner. Would be a fantastic fit for the Celtics too. He's played his way out of being there for Boston. And again, second apron, new CBA, it changed how teams are built. You no longer could just add and throw money everywhere and pay the taxes. It's the repeater tax that makes it real. Every dollar they were over the second apron, the Celtics were paying like 7-8 times that. So really $1 million contract would add up to being $7 to $8 million is what it would cost them. And so imagine $30 million, what that would do in that threshold. Him alone, just thinking of getting rid of Drew Holiday and going $5 million change, that was $41 million that they saved in tax penalties. That's what it's become in the NBA.
Okay, now I revisit this question because one of the fan reactions on Twitter mentioned this is why you have to move on from a Jaylen Brown. Would you be open to moving on from a Jaylen Brown now?
It would have to be a real elite NBA talent level player, a fit, and there would have to be a lot of draft assets in return. I mean, it would have to be, Desmond Bane's worth 5 firsts. So Jaylen Brown, it starts with 5 first-round picks, and you could say what you want about the value of those. And there would also have to be a all-star levelable, possibly all-NBA levelable player. And again, you're giving up an elite wing. What fits your system? It would have to be a wing of some sort, good ball handler that can shoot and defend. You're not going to get an exact Jaylen Brown in return.
Right.
But if you get draft picks, multiple firsts, and a good wing in return, that's something you can do. Teams should try to take advantage of the Celtics being in a do-or-die situation, but it's tough for the Celtics, as they've said, to part with the Jaylen Brown or Derek White. Those are guys that they want to keep.
Yeah, I'm sticking with patience on this one.
So you wouldn't trade Jaylen Brown?
No, I can understand. If you were trying to make a push for this season, obviously that's probably one of your best case scenarios because you have no money to work with and the roster doesn't particularly make sense at the moment. But I'm sticking with patience and let's circle back in 2 years.
Yeah, and that's going to be the real one. And again, we could see guys on the roster like an Anthony Simons, George Niang, come trade deadline, that's when I expected a Kristaps Porzingis to be moved. It's all about being under the second apron at the end of the next league year, at the end of next season, not before the season begins. They're already in the books. They're already over it. And that's why they have to be under the second apron for multiple seasons as well to get rid of that repeater tax. Again, like we're lawyers. I would be an awful lawyer. We're lawyers, accountants, litigators now.
I wanted to be once upon a time, but...
Too much school for me. I'm good on that. She's Casey Hudson. I'm George Bilecki. We'll take another break here on Boston Has Entered the Chat. When we're back, we'll get through what's trending in sports. And make sure, as always, to get the latest up-to-date Boston sports headlines. Boston Has Entered the Chat every Monday through Friday, 8 to 9 a.m. on NESN, 9 to 10 a.m. on NESN Nation. Every weekday, Boston Has Entered the Chat. Welcome back to Boston Has Entered the Chat live inside the Salem 5 studios. George Bilecki, Casey Hudson here. We'll get into what's trending. We always like to go through the topics you guys are blowing up your phones, your group chats, your Instagram DMs with your friends all about. And we start with the Florida Panthers, Casey. So NHL free agency will kick off at noon today. The reported big deal, Brad Marchand, 6 years, $31.5 million total value. That's just over $5.2 million a year. 6 years. That'll take him through his age 42 to 43 season. What a win by Brad Marchand. We know he wanted a long-term contract. We know he wanted around $6 million a year. And what the reports were coming out before the trade deadline was about it being, 3 years, $6 million, 3 years, $7 million in that ballpark. $31.5 million total. Wins his second Stanley Cup. Gets paid his last big payday before he retires. Who knows how long. Credit to Marchand. Credit to the Panthers. This is also tough, once again, for Boston Bruins fans to see because he'll be wearing Florida Panthers jersey for quite some time. See right there, Kristen Merriman. No. Responding to Savage Sports putting out the tweet of the Marchand deal. Another guy, Bruins, cap space, puke. Simple. That's what it is. They saw Brad win a cup. He stays there. This one from Meth Bear. Hey, that's my favorite Twitter handle on there. Swear to God, it's not my burner. With the news of the Brad Marchand extension in Florida, I would like to take this opportunity to officially announce my retirement from Twitter.
No, Meth Bear, don't go.
I say stay here. Look, the Panthers, they bring back their core. They signed their
they have
three
a
biggest
core
pending.
10, apparently, a core 10.
Right, like Sam Bennett, Ekblad, and Marchand now coming back, along with the rest of the guys.
Yeah.
I don't know how the Panthers do it, but they're not going anywhere.
Yeah, well, they're getting a good copy and paste from the Lightning, I'll tell you that. But
right.
I'm not surprised about this. I mean, Sophia and I talked about it on Hockey Hub yesterday, like the chances of him coming back, because, of course, there was flirtation with he's going to entertain conversations on Tuesday from Toronto and Boston. But if you just watch the footage close enough, and I know that you say and do crazy things when you're lifting the Stanley Cup and you're celebrating in the elbow room, but the context clues were all there. You only had to make one big move in your career, and that's down to Florida, which is like retirement central for half of America, if not me. And I know that the idea of going home to Canada is flattering, but the taxes there for the money that he's looking for the age that he was at, it didn't make sense to me in terms of like you just like wanting to go out of your career and like kind of be back in Canada. But his family got a taste of Florida. They get to put down new roots there, and I think with everything that took place and now this brotherhood that you're seeing, and that's the biggest conversation around the Florida Panthers locker room, is what kind of family they're like in there. Once that buy-in happens, I feel like that's a really tough locker room to escape or mentally actually want to walk away from with or without a cup in hand. So all signs were pointing to sticking to the Florida Panthers. It's just wild. I wasn't expecting 6 years. 4, sure. Pay him.
Even 4, I would have been like, what? But 6, that's a lot.
6 was a reach.
The Panthers know. Brad Marchand knows.
Yeah.
The last 2 years of that contract, he's not going to be playing for the Panthers. I mean, this is a guy that's coming off surgery after surgery after surgery every offseason and plays as many games as he can. That's the price of playing the game, especially in the style and fashion that he does. But the Florida Panthers were right by this signing. Bring back the core. Culture matters there. That's locker room leadership. He was a key piece on that third line and a big reason why you won that second Stanley Cup in back-to-back years. They bring him back, and sure, by the length of the contract, they're going, yeah, it's too much. But you look at the AAV, they'll figure out the books on the back end, and they'll figure out that point. They want to continue to contend for Stanley Cups. And for Brad Marchand, you say lifting up the cup. He got a taste of winning once again, but also of that culture in Florida.
Yeah.
What if he goes to the Leafs? That's a team that's further away from contending than the Panthers. Coming back to Boston, this is a team that's in a rebuild and getting younger, and it just wouldn't make sense of a fit where he's traded away. He comes back and becomes a captain. No. They have to turn the page in Boston. For Florida, this is a smart deal.
Makes
For
sense.
Brad Marchand, this is an amazing deal.
Yeah.
Almost $32 million.
Yeah.
6 years. Final payday of his career, and he gets the bag with it, too.
Yeah. And to add, we've got the cap space increasing, jumps 5% heading into this upcoming season. Then you got Bobrovsky's contract, big contract, falls off within the next year. So it's just like the finesse of the finances that they just did so perfectly over there. So happy for Brad. Never thought he was coming back, to be honest, but it's going to be really weird because we didn't have to face him. The Bruins didn't have to go against Brad over and over again. So now to know that you're going to be constantly competing against
playoffs too.
Captain. Yep.
Yeah, he wasn't with the Panthers. He wasn't healthy yet when Florida was here right after he was traded from the Bruins to the Florida Panthers at the deadline. All right, sticking across the league, we're talking little Leafs. Mitch Marner traded from the Leafs to the Golden Knights. 8 years, $96 million, the payday for Mitch Marner. Obviously was a hometown kid for the Leafs.
Yeah.
Had a great career there. Look at the numbers here. 741 points in 657 games played. Two-time All-Star. Fastest player in Leafs history to reach 600 points and fourth in assists in franchise history. Mitch Marner, though, his tenure in Toronto marred by the fact of never winning it, never breaking through. But really, that's a franchise as a whole of what the Toronto Maple Leafs are. Cool to see Marner go to Vegas, get paid. And it's like a Jack Eichel-esque path. Go to the Vegas Knights, get paid, and maybe something changes out there where he wins. Vegas Knights, again, another franchise, they go all in when it comes to free agency.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And honestly, happy for him because he's somebody who I really do think needed a change of scenery. Nate Thompson talked about it. And we've kind of seen how that's been a big help for a number of players. Just the pressure in Toronto is one thing. The minute the postseason hits, it's like we forget how skilled of a player he is. And yeah, you need your skilled players to show up in the postseason, but they cannot do it alone. They needed that extra gear. I mean, you saw more out of Matthew Knies for Toronto than you did for any other player. And there were still plenty of key plays that Marner came up strong on. So I think the fresh scenery for him. And weirdly enough, I feel like he kind of got pigeonholed into Vegas. I feel like there was a few other conversations on the table. There was that whole potential tampering situation. Toronto wanted key pieces back in return. So with that, it was just like we have to quietly move forward with this situation. But Vegas is still a great landing spot. I've always been a big fan of the misfits there because everyone has kind of either revamped themselves or found their identity in hockey with that Golden Knights roster.
I like you bring up that pressure because in Toronto, it's a different type of microscope, especially for Mitch Marner. Grew up a Leafs fan. We see the photos of him front porch as a kid holding a Leafs flag, first day of school, whatever the photo is. And the criticism he faces at times could be fair when you do disappear in the postseason, but at times also crosses the line of what was said to him and said about him too. You go to Vegas, and I think it's the same thing with Florida as well, where there are the expectations and the aspirations to win a cup. Vegas as a market, Florida as a market. Yeah, they may not care as much and they only care when you win, but that alleviates a lot of the pressure and it makes you able to focus on hockey more. And I think that's something that will be welcomed by Marner. And it's not a star and a talented player looking for an out. It's just a fact of the matter that it's more than what you do on the ice. It's a mental aspect of the game. And for a fan base like the Knights, you said it, it's misfits. It's everyone coming in. It's like Vegas. Only people that live there are moving there to relocate and want to get in the heat. And like you mentioned with Florida, evade some taxes in a way. Get more income coming in month to month. Don't blame them.
The culture is different in both of those places.
Exactly. They go in there. It's anyone from all walks of life, and it is a way of an escape.
Yeah.
It's like Florida. It's like Vegas, and for them, it's a hockey escape. I'm excited what he does on that ice with that team, that we'll see them reload and how they can do if they get back to the postseason as a contender. I think that's what's big. I like the fit. I like Marner heading there. I want to see what he accomplishes. If they make a deep run and he shows up in the postseason, it's going to be looking at Toronto like, what's wrong over there? That's a big thing, too.
Oh, he will. He's going to have that reality, and it's going to suck, but it's going to, again, different hockey culture. Fans love you through and through in those markets, those niche markets. You talk about a room that's got that, we are a family first kind of thing. Any player that you heard from Vegas, that's the motto.
If he does well, and that's Toronto Maple Leafs fans' hearts being broken, I'm all for that. I'm all for it.
They already started changing his jersey, so
of course
we're out.
Did. Of course they did. All right, so let's look to the Red Sox. They opened their series versus the Reds, 13-6 win. We, of course, know the big first inning they have, scoring 7 runs in that inning. And, hey, credit to Alex Cora. It was said after the game what he does really well and what the Red Sox have done well, they pick up on tipped pitches. It was a hyped matchup, Garrett Crochet against Chase Burns. Red Sox go off in the first inning. They pull through with runners in scoring position. Willie Abreu inside the park home run and a grand slam. The bats explode, just their second win in the last 9 games. But the Red Sox get a much-needed win. Still 2 games under 500.
Yeah, I think much needed is the emphasis there, but we've talked about it so much here. It's just like you want to get excited for these games, you want to get excited for these wins, but it's lopsided, because then the bats can go cold tomorrow, and it just goes to the flip of the coin consistently with this team. But I think one of the highlights for me is like some of the heat that Roman Anthony's been getting, some of the heat some of these young guys have been getting. I feel like they had token moments in last night's game. There were some weird innings there in the middle, that's for sure, where they started obviously let Cincinnati back into the mix. And you don't want things to get wonky once Crochet comes off the mound. Like, this has been a big conversation around all of it, but there was just so many highlight baseball moments in that game, and that's what made it so exciting to watch. And that's where you want to see them be able to freaking copy and paste this finally and pull everything good from that game into the stretch of the series and the next series to come.
Yeah, you look at their wins and their losses. In their last 7 losses, 2.7 runs scored per game. Their last 2 wins, a 15-1 win over the Blue Jays and 13-6 like we saw over the Reds. The bats explode at some point. For this team, it's still all about finding consistency and a level. And to get above 500 like they were, and they went on this long downturn, and get back to being consistent, we'll see. Garrett Crochet, still 9 strikeouts, yes, 4 earned runs, but was phenomenal on the bump.
Right.
This was a weird, just all-around baseball game. But for the bats to explode, to your point, for Roman Anthony to step up with his bat, get an RBI, also go 2 for 5 at the dish, it's those little steps for the Red Sox. Can they do it consistent? We'll see. This is a Cincinnati Reds team they should sweep. Can they keep this going? Can they continue to pick up? And even if pitches aren't being tipped, can they score enough runs to support their starting pitching, support their pitching in general, and get going that way? We'll see. Yeah. It's still, with this team, it's don't hold your breath. And yes, there's a long way to go until we can really see, like, are they out of it? But at the same time, the clock is ticking. The calendar is flipping to July. It is today.
Yeah.
The Red Sox have to wake up in that fashion, too.
My biggest question mark is, can they have the run success without all of that weird, messed up stuff that was going on for Cincinnati? Because let's not forget, Cincinnati had some weird stuff going on. Guys couldn't get off the ground, guys missing the ball. Like, they were all over the place in certain instances. So, like, if they're playing their best game, how can the Red Sox match and kind of raise their game, bring those runs in, and then be consistent in that fashion?
Yeah, for them, again, it's can you be consistent? Can you be good? And we'll see if the Red Sox can do that. All right, we'll take another break here on Boston's End of the Chat. When we're back, talking more Bees development camp. Hear from 7th overall pick James Hagan. Hear from Dean Letourneau, first-round pick from a year ago. And more coming up after the break right here on Boston is End of the Chat.
A couple flight delays and whatnot, but when you have a chance to put on the Bruin jersey, you can't say no. It doesn't matter what flight delay or how much sleep you get. This is a dream come true, and this is the first time you're able to put on the jersey. You'd have to cut off my leg to tell me I couldn't get on that ice. So,
how did it feel getting out there for the first time?
Oh, it was amazing. Being able to put that jersey on, to be able to put on that equipment and step on the ice and be a part of this organization. It's the coolest feeling in the world. To be able to be out there with all those coaches, all the players. It was really, really cool.
And that's Bruins 7th overall pick James Hagan. Have to cut off his legs to keep him off the ice.
That's what you want to hear.
After battling through the layovers. Yeah. And let's hope that never has to happen. I mean, that's one of his most
we need his legs.
Valuable assets.
Yeah.
His legs, his hands, his eyes because of his vision, and of course, as a hockey player overall. Love hearing that from him. He was at development camp. We saw the clips. It was James Hagan's working out with the Will Zellers. Now we see this team, very young, all coming together. This is a guy, 37 points in 37 games for Boston College, was touted as a top 3 pick, fell to the Bruins at 7. They need a center. He's a center. Will be 19 in November. The perfect match in a draft where the Bruins have to hit, especially having a high draft pick. I love the pick that they made, and I love hearing that from James Hagan.
Oh my gosh, I love the pick. I love hearing that. But what I also love is, like, it's so obvious how hungry he is to make an impact for the Boston Bruins. He says he's NHL ready now. Obviously, in my personal opinion and many others, we think one more year at BC, and yes, you're going to jump off the page, but it's the fact that he just has so much tenacity, desire to make that next step. You just know that it's going to be hard, almost impossible to make sure that this kid is silent when he hits the NHL, and I don't think he's going to be. I think he's going to make a lot of noise.
Yeah, it's a matter of, and he was expected before the draft even went underway for him to return to his second year at Boston College. It's 5'10", 185, but making that physical leap from playing junior hockey and with the development program as well for the U.S., going up to Hockey East, which is very physical, one of the hardest conferences of all of hockey. We saw his game taper off and away, but this is still a guy that had 11 goals and 26 assists for a Boston College team that much of the year was #1 in the country. And again, he didn't turn 18 until November. So just turning the page, just getting of age to be playing college hockey, let alone to be a college student and making an impact on the ice with first rounders, with NHL players, all spread throughout the entire roster. That's someone that has a fit. And what it is with the Bruins and what it is with the rebuild is that it is finding a long-term solution. And is doing a way of when you can hit reset on a roster, not to be in the same position 2 or 3 years, but be solid, be back contending, and in the postseason for the next 10 to 15 years consistently. And a piece like James Higgins does that. His speed, his hands, his vision, his playmaking ability, it's something they lacked. It's something they need. And this is a guy that could be the center for the future. So however he gets to the NHL, and however long of a timeline, within reason, you'll take it. As long as his development is taken care of, that's what you want.
Yeah, I think one more season at BC will do him just fine. But here's the thing. We're overhyping the contrast of him having a quiet year. We still have something else to kind of engage him with. It's Worlds. It's what he did to help USA win gold. You're talking about somebody that picked up a number of goals out there and was very impactful. When you go to BC and you're playing next to a Ryan Leonard and a Perreault, yeah, you might get a little bit silent, but I don't think it's silence. I think that he had to transfer his game. I think he had to be more of an assist guy versus a goal guy. So somebody that has that versatility to them that can be selfless in certain moments and selfish in certain moments, I think that's a key trait to kind of give a little bit more praise to. When you look at what he did in the Worlds, more importantly, how calm and composed and skilled he is in the slot, creating passing lanes. I mean, he was the king of picking up goals for the back door, just making it look easy time after time after time. And the fact that his totality in the low slot, that's where we saw a lot of goalies get beat in the playoffs that just wrapped up and throughout this previous season. So he fits the bill of where the NHL is going. The one more year will help him put in some more size and strength, one would hope. And I also make the argument of how the compete level is going to change. We have CHL players and OHL players that are able, not and, but OHL falls under CHL, eligible for D1 hockey this August. Look at how many guys in the draft declared for these different universities. The compete is going to be different. The competition is going to be different. And now he's going to have to be the key guy at BC. He's going to have to be the goal scorer at BC. Good evaluation point, good competition, good help with development, but more importantly, we know what he's capable of because we saw what he did in Worlds in comparison when he was playing with his buddies at BC.
Especially with the construct, with that happening in hockey, we're going to see a lot of grown men playing college hockey. The age
like
average.
What we talked about with European basketball.
Exactly,
You know what I mean?
and it's been hockey.
There.
Look at a team that won the Hockey East this year in Maine. Their top 6, their top 9, 22, 23 was the youngest age when you go throughout their lines, and they dominated the conference and that tournament, and they made a good run when they got to the national tournament as well. But that's the case for all of college hockey.
Yeah.
The age change will lead to more physical play and test, better development at that level, better development than being in the AHL for James Higgins. Up to speed, better talent around them, and better to get him ready for the NHL than if he goes up right away. So also, Sofia Jurkovic, our Bruins reporter, of course you guys know her, she caught up with Andre Grasso, another BC Eagle, another draft pick by the Bruins at development camp. Here he was talking about his favorite guest speaker out of the ones that the Bruins invited to development camp.
With development camp, usually the staff and crew, they have a former player or current player come and talk to the guys to help motivate them. You don't have to go through all of them, but was there anyone that you were like, whoa, impressed with learning from or talking to? And any messages or anything you've learned over the past couple of years that have stuck with you?
Yeah, I think Chara and Bergie actually talked to us a couple development camps ago, and just the whole message of leading together and making sure everyone's on the same page, coming in and the new guys as well. Just something that can resonate with me, and with just being a leader and making sure that everyone's included and everyone feels welcome.
Not too bad names to drop. Now, Andre Gasso, former 7th-round pick by the Bees. Anytime Patrice Bergeron, Zdeno Chara want to talk to you, two guys that establish that culture of the Spoke to be, you know the guys like this, the prospects will listen.
Well, and then when you find out that guys like that are taking the time to go speak to these players, like no wonder BC players want to stay in Boston and wear that Spoke to be on their chest and, you know, be the next era of the Boston Bruins. But he's somebody else who I'm intrigued to see like where his development goes and how he can help out the Bruins down the stretch. I know notes-wise from analysts and experts and anyone that's just kind of kept a close eye on him, a big circle around his name has just been keep an eye on his one-timer. So again, where the game is going, those quick releases, the ability to have the one-timer, where they can contribute, like you can see where they're heading, and it looks promising, I would say.
Yeah, for Andre Gasso, if that's a guy that can take a leap, not just for BC, but also when it comes to for the Boston Bruins, that's something that'd be huge for them. Again, just adding depth in certain spots. Hey, one more Eagle to talk about here, and one more with sound. Dean Letourneau, who's a freshman for the Eagles, our fourth-line center, shared that he was playing with a broken hand, what that challenge was for him, and more right here with Sofia Jurkcevic.
You were playing with a broken hand for the first half of the season. Yeah. What was that whole experience like? Like, that sucks. That just plain out sucks. Then you had to have surgery.
Yeah.
Can you just tell us about that season and the pain and just like mentally wanting to get better quickly and, you know, showing what you got?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a mental grind, not being able to really stick handle a puck or shoot a puck. I was basically only using my bottom hand, so it was a little tough.
Oh.
And then I was debating whether or not to get it done at Christmas time or wait till after the season. And then we had like 4 weeks off for Christmas, and I was like, the window was 3 to 5 weeks for recovery. So I was like, I might as well get it if I have to miss a weekend. I'd rather be able to play at least some of the games fully healed. It ended up only taking 2 weeks to recover, and then I was back practicing and stuff. So I was way quicker than my trainer thought. But it was definitely a mental grind, just trying to stay through it. Already going through a little bit of a rough patch without scoring and stuff, and then having a broken hand as well, kind of just cherry on top there.
So that's Dean Letourneau, who will be returning to Boston College for his sophomore season. I mean, played in 36 games, never registered a goal, had just 3 assists. And that was a topic that a lot of people honed in on, of being critical of him and saying, well, this is a Bruins, why do they draft him? That's also someone that was a year ahead of his development, went to Boston College early when Will Smith goes to the league. When other draft picks that the Eagles had, they go. Greg Brown reached out to him and said, hey, we need you here now, but also sheds light. Playing through a broken hand, that's toughness by him, overcoming adversity, and sheds more light on why he struggled in his freshman season.
Yeah, the restrictions are obvious. You got to go back to his prep school numbers and see what he can bring to the table on a healthy end. I'm not going to judge this kid that harshly at this moment.
Yeah, even without the broken hand news, again, was a year ahead of when he should have been in college. Good to hear him on the mend, though, from that broken hand. Casey Hudson, George Bilecki, this is Boston's End of the Chat. That's it for us right here on NESN. You can always catch Hour 2 on NESN Nation as well. It's Boston's End of the Chat every Monday through Friday. Catch us then. We'll see you guys next time.